And now for our Carib Update exclusive, we will go back tonight to Kingston, Jamaica. Now, as promised earlier in the broadcast, we are going direct now to Kingston, Jamaica. We have with us Sonja SImms, a lecturer in communications and a former reporter here at CARIBUPDATE News. Sonja, tell us what is happening weather-wise in Kingston area right now.
Kingston, I would say, is uneventful. We've been in this position since last Thursday, waiting to see. But there's a lot of anxiety. I live in a community that is pretty quiet, just a little drizzle, and it has been like this since yesterday or maybe yesterday afternoon. It started to drizzle, but it had been just a very still, gray, gloomy atmosphere here in Kingston.
And how is the general mood of the people there?
Well, the truth is, we have been cautioned to stay in. So I have not been reacting or interacting with many persons. But the ones I get to interact with on phone, they have been saying this one is going to be a serious one. And for many, it's just like, why can't it just come and go if it's to come? But we are praying fervently for it not to come.
And do you think Jamaica is ready for this big one?
I don't know that Jamaica is ever ready or any nation is ever ready for any catastrophe, but our leaders have been cautioning and warning, and they have made preparation for persons to be safe in this natural disaster. I know that there are many government efforts, public sector efforts to get people out of vulnerable areas, to bring them to shelters, and so on. And those efforts have been underway since last week. I will tell you, I physically went to church yesterday. My church is that kind of a church. And on my way back, many of the stores, the hypermarket, the supermarket, maybe one and two small shops would be open, but people are staying off the street. I have been watching the public space cameras, and you can see people have been off the streets. From last week, though, before we touched into the weekend, persons were actually bread was finished from off the shelves, and people have stocked up on a lot of dry goods. But we're hoping for the best, but we're fearing the worst.
All right, thank you very much, Sonja, for sharing this update with us, and we hope you stay safe during this period.
Thank you so very much.
We are staying in Kingston. Let us go now to Neika Lewis, who is with CVM TV in Jamaica. Hi, Neika. Hope you are keeping safe. Now,
Thank you.
at this hour, what is the biggest news coming in as Jamaica prepares for this major hurricane?
Well, Tahira, unfortunately, we're already hearing from our authorities here of fatalities in relation to the events connected to Melissa. In the first case, while Melissa has not yet made landfall, we've heard of a lightning incident that left 3 people dead and 13 others injured. So, 3 fatalities so far. We're unclear as to exactly where, in which parish, all of that, but the authorities have said 3 fatalities have been confirmed in relation to that incident. If you see me looking on, I'm looking over at my notes because I remember just being jolted by the news just a while ago that the health minister confirmed for us.
Okay. Now, as we speak, what are the actual weather conditions like?
So here in Kingston, it's been mostly rainy for the better part of the afternoon or the morning, and we've been having those sporadic rainfall as well throughout the course of last week into this week. And so we haven't been experiencing what we'd classify as hurricane-like conditions just yet. We are more inland, that's CVM TV, more inland. We are on Constant Spring Road. It's not so close to the shoreline. And so we should be relatively safe for now as it relates to those communities along the coastal area. We've heard of heavy wind, we've heard of storm surges, we've seen crashing waves, and up to yesterday, the government had to be reinforcing the message of safety for some who decided to go out in that sort of condition nonetheless to surf at the Bob Marley Beach over there in St. Thomas, or in the vicinity of Bull Bay heading into St. Thomas.
You mentioned earlier about deaths. Are there any reports of any damages?
Early days yet, of course, we've heard of flooding. Our reporters are canvassing the entire 14 parishes, and our correspondents, we've been getting feedback from locals who've said there have been reports of flooding in areas like Portland Cottage out there in Clarendon. That's that unique tip closer to the southern end of the island that you'd see when you look on the map of Jamaica. And so they are pretty exposed to the coastal activities. They are out on that stretch. And so they have been experiencing flooding. We've also heard of flooding taking place in a few other western parishes leading up to this point, and heavy winds. We know there are several parishes that have been heavily saturated from last week into this week, and so we're expecting quite the threat. Boulders likely to be loose, land slippage in other areas, hilly areas are exposed, low lying areas are exposed. And so we're just keeping our ears close to the ground with the authorities, keeping us updated and us informing the masses as to what exactly to expect.
In your reporting today, what would you say is the biggest worry you have been hearing from the wider Jamaica, like as everyone gets ready to, for the what is to come throughout the night and in the morning, of course?
It's just the general concern and fear that it's just a general concern and fear that we've never, most people in our generation have never seen anything of this sort. The most we've seen is a category 4 or a category 3. We've never experienced a category 5. My grandparents have never either. Many Jamaicans would have been seeing a category 5 for the very first time in recorded history. And so that fear, we don't really know what to expect. We know it's going to be bad, but just how bad, we're not clear. We are hoping that our infrastructural construction and all of that will help us to weather it in some way sensibly, but we're really not clear on what that will look like, say, 24 hours after the storm passes.
Now, I know that the disaster management officials have been urging people to evacuate from low-lying and flood-prone areas. Have people heeded those calls?
It's interesting you ask that, because we have a culture of lateness in this country where quite a bit of the times we've reported in the news leading up to today's activities and perhaps to this point, where Jamaicans have said, especially in some of those flood prone areas and landslide threatened areas, that they're not moving, they're staying put. They don't want to be caught up in this cluster of sorts at any of the shelters. They don't want to be in any way uncomfortable outside their home spaces. And so they prefer to weather it at home. Now, some of the people who are saying this, they live literally below sea level in communities like Portland Cottage, where just recently we heard in a press conference from the Minister of Local Government, Desmond McKenzie, that it's now in this latter moment that many of these residents are calling on the authorities to send out the buses that went out before and were turned back, empty buses, that they're asking if those buses could be resent. So it's a cultural challenge and it's a social issue that we're trying to help as media workers to rectify. But the struggle continues. It's only when it gets down to life threatening scenarios that many of these people will evacuate.
Now, based on the latest forecasts, around what time would Jamaica feel the brunt of the system?
It's projected to hit us anywhere between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. thereabout Tuesday morning. So it's really on the Tuesday morning that we're anticipating some of the battering or the worst of the battering. We've heard of possibilities where we may start feeling some of the hurricane type conditions and worsening effects from late Monday night, which is late tonight, into Tuesday morning. And so all parishes pretty much will be getting a battering. And we know that it will make landfall in southwest St. Elizabeth, typically known as our breadbasket parish. Southwest is a constituency, but St. Elizabeth, the parish, the breadbasket parish, that's where quite a bit of the agricultural activities take place and work taking place there to expand the farming and the options for farmers there, all going down the drain at this point. They recently were trying to they were trying to overcome the effects of Hurricane Beryl, which was just over a year ago. Many of them lost roofs, they lost houses and property. I had a friend who owned a gun range. He said he's still trying to pick up the pieces. Business is not the same. These are people who are still tremendously impacted and have had now to contend with hearing landfall of this mega monster hurricane is going to occur there sometime between tonight into early tomorrow morning.
All right, Nika, thank you very much for that update, and we hope you stay safe during this period.
Thank you so much, Tyra. All the best. Bye-bye.
This is the home of original reporting. This is CARIBUPDATE News Nightly.